out of this mess because we don't even know if there is a Roman clergy. So could it be that they're wrong? Could it be that their interpretation is just simply wrong, and that maybe then these guys aren't the greatest popes in the world, but they still are validly elected? I think the conclusion is obvious.
Okay, the third question from Brother Michael and Brother Peter Dimond.
In his encyclical Quanta Cora, Pope Pius IX solemnly condemned the idea that religious liberty should be a universal civil right. This is because the state has the duty to protect the Catholic religion and forbid the public expression of false creeds which lead people to hell. This condemnation of the right to religious liberty was repeated by many popes, including in Pope Pius IX's famous Syllabus of Errors. But at Vatican II, in the Declaration on Religious Liberty, Dignitatis Humanae, Paul VI solemnly taught that religious liberty should be a universal civil right. How can Paul VI be a true pope and Vatican II a true council, when at Vatican II Paul VI solemnly taught exactly what the Catholic Church solemnly condemned?
Well, first off, again, we get into this whole aspect of the interpretation of the council, which seems to, as you say, contradict earlier teaching. I have right in front of me a 9-page piece of work that Father William Most wrote on this very topic, and he obviously totally disagrees with you. He says that Vatican II did not condemn religious liberty. It merely asserted that people have a freedom from coercion. I encourage anyone, again, to do a Google search on this. He goes through it unbelievably, point by point. And also he has a book out, Catholic Apologetics Today. He also deals with this quite thoroughly, and I think he does a very adequate job in showing that the religious liberty does not contradict. Again, I go back to my basic point, is that in order for your position to be correct, we have chaos, so your interpretation of these documents cannot be correct. But I also encourage you two guys to go and read most things. He does a just type religious liberty in Google, and you'll print up his 9-page work, and it's very, very good. That's all I have on that.
Okay. He said that it was our interpretation. No, this is Benedict XVI's interpretation, and he actually admits that Vatican II's teaching on religious liberty contradicts Pope Pius IX's teaching on religious liberty. So you don't have to take our word for it. You can take the word of the man he thinks is the Pope. Principles of Catholic Theology, page 381, Benedict XVI. If it is desirable to offer a diagnosis of the text as a whole, referring to the Vatican II document Gaudium et Spes, in conjunction with the texts on religious liberty and world religions, it is a revision of the syllabus of Pius IX, a kind of counter-syllabus. As a result, the one-sidedness of the position adopted by the Church under Pius IX was to a large extent corrected. And he goes on to say that there can be no return to the syllabus of Pius IX. So here you have his very Pope. Okay, how much more could we need to show to prove the point? Admitting exactly what we just said, which is so obvious even to anyone who reads the text and knows what the Church teaches.
Yeah, so Mr. Golle is saying our interpretation's ridiculous when the man who he believes is the Supreme Pontiff is saying it, we have exactly the same understanding. We understand what Benedict XVI is saying, okay, because he admits what he's saying.
He admits it's a counter-syllabus of Pius IX. Okay, and it's very clear from the text, Dignitatis Humanae number 3 says the state exceeds its authority if it dares to direct or prevent religious activity. The state cannot, therefore, prevent religious activity. That's directly condemned in number 77. It says, it is of the Syllabus of Errors of Pius IX. It is no longer expedient that the Catholic religion should be the only religion of the state to the exclusion of all other cults. Condemned. And that's what I'd say about that.
Now the fourth question for Mr. Golle.
Okay. Back to the Roman clergy. In order for there to be what you two would consider a valid Roman cleric, is it not true that they would have to hold the Sedevacantism position, obviously if they're going to elect a pope, and also your interpretation of no salvation outside the church as well?
Yes, in order to be a true pope, you have to be a Catholic.
I mean the clergy, one of the clergy members.
Okay, can you repeat the question?
They're electing. He's asking as far as electing.
Yes. Okay, you want, maybe I
No, the church has never, defined exactly what the standards are for valid participants in the election by the Roman clergy. That's why I cited the example earlier in the 7th century when Pope Eugene, was elected the Pope after his first election and nomination had been invalid because Pope St. Martin I was already alive and reigning. Okay, can you tell me exactly what the process was by which Pope Eugene became the Pope when he had already been nominated? How many clergy had to accept him in order for him to be the Pope? I'm sure you can't answer that because it's still not clear to this day. So it's not always neat and tidy exactly how the clergy of Rome elects a pope.
And as far as the people, if they're Catholic, someone who would pertinaciously reject the teaching of the Catholic Church obstinately would cease to be Catholic. So the question of when the person reaches that point is a question.
But none of this has any value, in refuting the undeniable, in attempting to refute the undeniable fact that Benedict XVI, John Paul II, Paul VI, etc., and Vatican II are purveyors of a new religion, a new gospel, directly condemned by the popes and therefore can't be popes.
2-minute rebuttal.
Yeah. Well, again, I guess the point of my question is that obviously obviously we have a situation where the Dimond Bros are asserting that since we have no college of cardinals, that the Roman clergy would elect the next pope. I don't even know if that can be substantiated, but the point I'm making is that they don't believe anyone is a Catholic unless they, number one, hold the Sedevacantism position and hold all the truths of the Catholic faith that they believe, which would include the Feeneyite position on salvation. So I dare say you probably don't even have, according to their criteria, a valid Roman clergy. Because you would have to find someone in Rome that is validly ordained in the old rite, because they don't believe the new rite is validly ordained. Not only is he validly ordained, he would have to be a Sedevacantist, and then this person would have to make a judgment on who to elect as the pope. There would have to be at least 2 of them, because who would they vote for? I guess they could vote for a layman Sedevacantist to, I guess, be consecrated, ordained, consecrated, and all that. I guess that's possible. But do you see the absurdity of this position? There's no way for anyone to know. I mean, like I said before, they can quote all they want. And I go on record. I will accept an invitation to come back. If you want to pick 5 quotes that you believe are heretical by any of these 5 popes, or 4 quotes, 4 or 5 quotes, and we can go by them down piece by piece. Pick your 4 or 5 strongest, and we'll go at it on those quotes, because I don't believe you're correct in your interpretations. But I mean, to have a debate like this and have you guys, which I knew you were going to do anyway.
Okay, time is expired.
Okay, good.
The next question, the 4th question from Brother Michael and Brother Peter Diamond.
My question.
Hold on. What question is this? The 5th?
4th.
This is only the 4th?
This is the 4th question.
Ooh, these are a lot of questions. All right, good.
Assuming he's undergone no conversion in the last few days, is John Kerry, the obstinate pro-abortion politician, a Catholic or is he a heretic? If he's a heretic, please tell us by exactly what authority you say that he is a heretic, since he's never been declared a heretic by your Pope.
Well, I would answer that. I would say, assuming that John Kerry has not gone into a conversion, I would say John Kerry definitely is a heretic, whether it be material or formal, I don't know. I don't know his knowledge of the faith, but let's just say he knows pretty much, I'm sure, that the Catholic position is pro-life and he's pro-choice. I say that because it's very clear. It's very clear what the Catholic position is. Now, it's so clear in that particular case that you don't have any dispute from anyone at all. In other words, if you were to say, hey, okay, John Kerry says he's pro-choice, and you had a whole group of people that would argue that, well, pro-choice can be compatible with Catholicism, you may have to have a question. I'm just saying, you may have to have a question there, and the Pope or a commission approved by the Pope might have to make a decision on that. In your case, I know what you guys are trying to do here. In your case, it's not the case. I have 50 pages from Bobson Genesis website that took you on that explain these pieces, piece by piece, on how it's really not saying what you guys are saying. I have other quotes, such as John Paul II in the early 80s that talked about no salvation outside the church. I mean, Paul VI had a encyclical letter that talked about how all religions are not equal, that we must profess the one true religion. Like I said, I'll challenge you guys up and down. Let's do quote for quote. Every quote you can bring up, I could bring up the other side that these guys have said. Okay, and I don't believe your interpretation is correct. In the case of John Kerry, you don't have anyone on record trying to argue. There is no debate. In your case, there's a huge debate amongst people, huge, whether or not your interpretation is correct. And the vast 99.99% of Catholics don't agree with you.
All right, the 2-minute rebuttal.
Well, I asked him that question because by answering it, he proved our point that heretics are recognized to be outside the church without any declaration because it's, quote, very clear. Well, we've already proven that it's very clear, and in fact, there's much more evidence against Benedict XVI, John Paul II, etc., that they are heretics than there is against John Kerry. In fact, we've quoted the very authorities Mr. Golle subjects himself to, such as Casper, Benedict XVI, who admit exactly what we're saying they say. Okay, so by admitting that John Kerry is to be considered a heretic, he's proving our point and illustrating the principle of Leo XIII that the practice of the church has always been the same, that those who defect from the church faith publicly are considered outside the church.
And also, the people that Mr. Golle regards as the hierarchy of his church do not agree with him on the issue of John Kerry. They regard John Kerry as a Catholic. Okay? They say that he shouldn't be denied Holy Communion. Benedict XVI, when the U.S. bishops devised their policy a few years ago that each bishop should make their own determination of how they deal with pro-abortion politicians, wrote to Rome, and it was Joseph Ratzinger who responded that the U.S. bishops' policy of letting bishops decide whether they want to give communion or not to pro-abortion politicians is very much in line with the way the Vatican sees this issue. So Mr. Golle doesn't even agree with all the bishops that he regards as the hierarchy of the Catholic Church and Benedict XVI. John Kerry also has said that he holds Catholic teaching against abortion, that he disagrees with abortion, and just proving again that he goes by his actions, too.
He just says he doesn't impose his own belief on other people, affirming that he thinks he believes in the Catholic teaching. That's it for that.
All right, the 5th question from Mr. Golle.
Okay. I want to go back to the Sedevacantism position on Catholics. Do you not hold that in order for an individual to be a Catholic, they have to hold the Sedevacantist position? Is that not correct?
We've explained in our material that in order to be a Catholic, you cannot be a heretic. We've clarified that we do not regard everyone who doesn't hold the Sedevacantist position as a heretic if they have not seen the evidence proving the point. Once they've seen, however, the arguments and the evidence and the heresies, such as the joint declaration with the Lutherans on justification, etc., the Assisi prayer meetings, and they don't denounce these men as heretics, yes, they would be heretics at that point. It's also possible to be a heretic, to denounce these individuals as heretics, okay, because there are many non-Sedevacantists who actually recognize that these guys are heretics, but they mistakenly believe that heretics can be popes. Okay, so before that teaching has been presented to them and proven to them that a heretic cannot be regarded as a pope, they could be erring in good faith on that matter. So we've pointed that out clearly. But once they see the evidence, okay, there is no room for good faith.
From the teaching of the church.
From the popes, the magisterial pronouncements, heretics are not members of the church. okay, and the clear, undeniable new religion of the Vatican II sect.
And that's why it's an egregious misrepresentation to say that unless they agree every single point. No, it's once they see the evidence of what the Church teaches, see it, and then reject it, they would fall outside the Church.
Like someone who would declare that Benedict XVI is their Pope once they've heard the evidence that we've proven that he agrees with the Lutherans on justification. That's it for that question.
All right, 2-minute rebuttal.
Yeah, I think this again goes back to my point is that certainly the brothers are asserting that one cannot really hold that Benedict XVI is the Pope, or that the prior post-conciliar popes are the Pope, and be a priest or a cleric in good standing, because any priest who's gone through seminary, according to them, I'm sure, would be exposed to these quotes. So, again, it goes back to my point that we have on the table. We have a clear statement from the First Vatican Council that St. Peter will have perpetual successors. We have a clear situation where Pope Pius XII sets up the law on how that's done. We have a situation where in order for there to be a Pope elected, we have, according to the Dimonds, pure, utter chaos. Nobody knows how there'll be another Pope elected. They say that the Roman clergy will elect the next Pope. It hasn't been done in 50 years. I don't know why it hasn't been done. It needs to be done. We have a situation where, according in their church, if there's a doctrinal matter that needs to be defined or clarified, they can't do it because they have no visible head. And not only that, they're in a tough position because they believe that not only with the Roman clergy, but the Roman clergy would have to agree with them on the Sedevacantism position in order to be a Catholic. And I dare say, I doubt you have too many people, if not any, in Rome that, number one, is a Feniite, number two is a Sedevacantist, and number three is a validly ordained clergyman. So, again, I go back to this utter chaotic point.
Okay, time is up.
Yep.
And now the 5th question from Brother Michael and Brother Peter Dimond.
In 2004, John Paul II appointed Bishop Gorian as the new, quote, Catholic bishop in Jerusalem. Bishop Gorian is a Jew who supposedly converted, and he holds that the Jews have no obligation to become Christians. Bishop Gorian stated, as reported by Israel Today, the Catholic Church has no intention of converting Jews to Christianity. My question is, since Bishop Gorian holds that the Church has no intention of converting Jews, is Bishop Gorian the Catholic bishop in Jerusalem with whom Catholics must share faith, or is his episcopal chair vacant because he is a public heretic?
Again, I would have to go and look at the quote. If you're quoting him accurately, obviously I don't agree with the quote. I believe Jews are obligated to become Catholic, to be saved in a normative sense. Whether or not he automatically loses his office because he is a manifest heretic, I'm not sure if that's true, and if he is renouncing the faith on that Jews don't have to be converted, then again, I believe it's up for study the way I read canon law that if he automatically loses his office. I simply don't know. I'm not. Again, I am a firm believer that sometimes people are misquoted. That sometimes, if you go back and you were to ask him, "Hey, Bishop or Archbishop, did you mean this?" Because one time I was studying in theology school, and I thought a professor said something that was heretical, and maybe it was. And I went back and I said, "Did you mean this?" And he didn't mean that. So I would number one, I would say I don't know whether if somebody commits a public manifest heresy. I have to study that issue more, whether or not they lose their office. I know the old Code of Canon Law seems to suggest that they do. I would probably lean toward that. But I don't want to commit saying that, yes, he absolutely, definitely does. But I'm not willing to automatically make him a heretic, because I'm not sure. Number one, I haven't read the quote. Number two, I haven't read the full context of the quote. And number three, I would before I ruled anyone a heretic, I would ask for a clarification, at least if I was able to. You guys seem to want to take one quote and then burn them at the stake, and I think that's what you've done all along here. You take one quote or two quotes or one paragraph and say, "Whoa, this can't be right," instead of maybe giving somebody the benefit of the doubt. You guys want to be, you just want to, you want to be judge, jury, and executioner, and I'm not willing to grant you that. That's all I have on that question.
Okay, the rebuttal to that is quite obvious. He admitted that he would lean towards the position that he's not the bishop. Okay, and he says he doesn't know. He doesn't know if a man who says that the Catholic Church has no intention of converting Jews to Christianity would be the Catholic bishop. With that, we rest our case.
And also, Canon 2200.2 of the 1917 Code of Canon Law, and the teaching of the Church is that malice is presumed in the external form when a violation of the law has occurred. Okay, so it doesn't presume he's innocent, then I got to go talk to him and find out if he really said that. If it's clear in public that he said these things, he's presumed to be a heretic in the external form.
And by admitting that he leans toward that position, that he's not the bishop, okay, he admits our very principle, because John Paul II and Benedict XVI, of course, teach the same heresy, that the Old Covenant is valid. It's taught by other bishops, okay, such as Archbishop Joseph Dory of Strasbourg, France, who refers to the idea that the Old Covenant ceased. He says, at Vatican II, the Catholic Church finally revised this teaching. We have Cardinal William Keeler of Baltimore, who said campaigns that target Jews for conversion to Christianity are no longer acceptable in the Catholic Church.
And we have John Paul II on March 26, 2000, going in front of the Western Wailing Wall, signifying that the Old Covenant religion is valid, while about the whole nation of Israel watched this and saw that he's saying that you don't have to convert to Christianity.
And we have St. Robert Bellarmine saying that the fathers unanimously teach that heretics are outside the church and they're ipso facto deprived of all jurisdiction, meaning he ceases to be the Bishop of Jerusalem, just like Antipope John Paul II was not the Bishop of Rome, nor is Benedict XVI. And Nestorius, in the case of Nestorius, he was the 5th century Patriarch of Constantinople who denied that Mary was the mother of God. Okay, he didn't even deny the whole incarnation. He corrupted the incarnation, and his faithful considered him as not a bishop and outside the church. And here we have them saying that you don't have to believe in the incarnation at all.
And Nestorius was condemned by a mere layman at first. So people say, you guys are condemning him. Well, yeah, it was just a mere layman that condemned Nestorius, who held the second highest position in the Catholic Church.
And that reaction was praised by popes and councils.
All right. Now the 6th question from Mr. Golle.
Okay. In the Gospels, St. Peter, the first pope, committed an act of public apostasy, really, in denying Jesus Christ as, denying he even knew Jesus Christ. Yet he remained pope and wrote 2 infallible encyclicals. How do you justify that with your position that a public heretic would lose his office? And if a public heretic does lose his office, if he repents, does he regain it?
Well, he's referring to Matthew 16:23, and it's something where...
Yeah, the answer to that is very simple, and his problem stems from a misunderstanding of the teaching of the Church. Vatican I declares that St. Peter, the jurisdiction of the papacy, was not conferred upon St. Peter when our Lord pronounced the words of, "You are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church." Vatican I explicitly says that he became the pope after the resurrection.
And that's why he says, I will give thee.
And he says, feed my lambs, feed my sheep, in John 21. That's when, according to the dogmatic teaching of Vatican I, St. Peter became the pope. He was not the pope, in Matthew 16. Therefore, when he denied Jesus Christ, St. Peter had not yet assumed the supreme pontificate. That's the explicit teaching of Vatican I, And I can actually find that. Oh, here it is, Denzinger, number 1822. And upon Simon Peter alone, Jesus, after his resurrection, conferred the jurisdiction of the highest pastor and rector over his entire fold, saying, feed my lambs, feed my sheep. Directly refuting the objection there. And as far as regaining the office, a public heretic could only regain the office by a public abjuration of his heresy, if that's assuming he was a pope in the first place. But in the case of the Vatican II antipopes, these guys were not validly elected at all. So that's the answer to that.
2-minute rebuttal.
Yeah. Okay. I guess my point is that there is a dispute whether or not a pope who commits heresy, whether he actually loses his office or not, or whether or not a pope could actually fall into heresy. There were, definitely different opinions on whether or not that could happen. I don't believe we have any I could be wrong on this. I don't think we have any magisterial text that applies to if a pope is a heretic, he will lose his office. Even Paul IV applies to someone who is elected. Is prior to his election, if he's a heretic, he does not gain the office. Also, Paul IV seems to imply that the Pope really doesn't lose his office because he says if a Pope in that same letter, he said in that same bull, he says that if a Pope leads you astray, do not follow him. So there seems to be a dispute on that. I don't really think that's a major point of contention, though. I don't think that the Dimond brothers have showed in any way that they can get out of this mess. They've repeatedly, I think, dodged the question about how we would get another pope, sheer of God coming down and raining fire in the sky. You have no conclave. You have no valid cardinals. And as time goes on, we're in the, 47th, 48th year, the position gets worse and worse for the Dimonds. I mean, you don't even have any bishops with jurisdiction that you can prove. I mean, there's been no pope for half a century, so how could a bishop have ordinary jurisdiction? Just simply is unfathomable to me. I think that's all I have.
All right, now the sixth question from Brother Michael and Brother Peter Dimond.
The Catholic Church has taught for 2,000 years that non-Catholics may not lawfully receive Holy Communion. As Pope Gregory XVI put it, he who eats the lamb outside this house is unholy. But the Vatican II Church officially teaches that non-Catholics may lawfully receive Holy Communion, as is taught in Vatican II, the New Catechism, the New Code of Canon Law, numerous encyclicals. If the post-Vatican II anti-popes are true popes, how can they officially and authoritatively teach the opposite of the Catholic Church on this point?
I believe in those cases, and I haven't necessarily studied this particular one, but I believe it's the cases. I believe it's the Orthodox can receive communion, and it's only under certain circumstances. I would have a question on whether or not that is a disciplinary matter or whether that is a magisterial teaching that that someone cannot receive communion. I would certainly look into that further. I don't believe that's necessarily a moral teaching that cannot be changed. I would probably assert that is a norm, and it's a disciplinary law. That, but again, I don't want to sound like I'm absolutely certain on that because I haven't looked into that issue thoroughly. Perhaps if I come back to debate, perhaps we can go over that point.
Okay, he's not sure because there's no answer. A true pope cannot teach that non-Catholics may lawfully receive Holy Communion because that's been condemned by the whole tradition of the Church. As Pope Pius VIII said, he who eats the lamb outside this house will perish as those during the flood who were not with Noah in the ark.
Pius IX, yeah. Okay, Pius VIII.
Pius IX said, similarly, whoever eats of the lamb and is not a member of the Church has profaned. Okay, it's not a disciplinary law. Something that is that profanes the soul, that puts him in a state of mortal sin, cannot be declared to be acceptable, okay, by the Church later on. It's rooted in the solemnly defined dogma of Pope Eugene IV in Denzinger 714 that the unity of this ecclesiastical body is of such importance that only for those who abide in it do the Church's sacraments contribute to salvation. The Church's sacraments only contribute to salvation to those in it. Therefore, those who receive sacraments outside the Church receive it to their own damnation. That's a dogma. The principle of non-Catholics not receiving Holy Communion is rooted in this dogma. The Vatican II anti-popes have changed this. That's a direct heresy. It absolutely proves that they are not true popes, but manifestly heretical anti-popes, and that the official teaching of the Vatican II Church is heretical. How much time is it?
You still got 45 seconds.
Oh, okay. Well, John Paul II, actually, in his general audience, August 9th, 1995, commented on this teaching. And actually, in Unum Sint number 48, he commented on it. And he said, through the participation in the sacraments and other functions and objects with these non-Catholics, he says, there must never be a loss of appreciation for the ecclesiological implication of sharing in the sacraments, especially the Holy Eucharist. Ecclesiological implication, that means church implication. He's saying that they are in the church. Okay, that's the implication of giving them the sacraments. And they've explicitly taught that they're in communion with the church many, many times.
And that's why they believe that other so-called Christians, that the Church of Christ, not just the Catholic Church, it's everybody who claims to be Christian, as is taught at Vatican II, that the Church of Christ subsists in the Catholic Church, the Church does not.
Now the 7th question for Mr. Golle.
Okay. Paul the Fourth. Where is it now? I'm trying to get the quote here. Try to get the quote actually. Okay, in Pope Paul the Fourth in his papal bull, he talks about how if a pope teaches error, do not follow him. Why doesn't he say he's no longer the pope if he teaches error? Why does he say do not follow him?
Okay, that's a very easily answered question. The entire bull is about how a heretic cannot be validly elected pope. Okay, and in the first part of the bull, he actually makes reference to two truths. He makes reference to the truth that no one can judge the pope, which refers to no one can subject a true bishop of Rome to a trial. Okay, and he refers to the truth that a pope can be contradicted if he should deviate in a matter of faith. He's referring to a pope who does not rise to the level of manifest heresy. That's why St. Robert Bellarmine, in a, quote, very distorted by non-Sedevacantists quite often, in chapter 29 of book 2 of his discussion of this issue, he says that if a pope tries to destroy the church, he can be resisted, but you can't depose him, okay? But in the very next chapter, he addresses the question of a manifestly heretical claimant. And he says it is certain that this guy would cease to be the pope. Okay, and so chapter 29 is talking about a pope who does things, he makes certain errors, okay, and does other bad things which don't rise to the level of manifest heresy. He can be contradicted, he can be resisted in those matters. But if he's a clear manifest heretic, as the Vatican II antipopes are, as we've proven many times over, he is certainly not the pope. And that's the truth expressed by Pope Paul IV in Cum Ex Apostolatus Officio, that the truth that a heretic cannot be accepted as a validly elected pope is not in any way contrary to the truth that no one can judge a true pope, and that a true pope can be resisted if he errs in doctrine but doesn't rise to the level of manifest heresy.
And he says that no one can accept a heretic as a legitimate pope.
That's the teaching of the Holy See.
Well, I agree.
Okay. How much time?
Okay.
If you'd like to continue, you've got a minute or more.
Oh, okay. Well, I think since we'll use some of the...
Yeah, he says that he's not sure whether canonists have taught that a pope would lose his office if he became a heretic. I mean, we have tons of quotes. All the canonists basically teach this truth, that a heretic, a person who would be a pope, who would become a manifest heretic, would automatically lose his office because it's rooted in the divine truth that a heretic cannot be in the church. He's outside of it.
And that's why St. Francis de Sales in the Catholic Controversy Against the Protestants, you can get it from 10 books, he says, now when the Pope is explicitly a heretic, he falls ipso facto from his dignity and out of the church. That's it for that.
All right, the 2-minute rebuttal.
Yeah, I agree that Pope Paul IV says that, someone cannot be elected as if he's a heretic. But I know there's different opinions on that. I don't think there's any magisterial text that talk about a pope. I mean, you have St. Robert Bellarmine, you have St. Francis de Sales, but you don't have any magisterial teaching. It's an opinion that the pope would lose his office if he becomes a manifest heretic. You simply do not have it. You don't have any. The church has never officially said that. You have maybe canonists who taught it, and there also is an opinion that a pope it cannot happen. I think Bellarmine had a number of different opinions and listed some as probable, most probable. So there are different opinions on that. There are just like there's different opinions on the interpretations that the Dimond brothers want to quote. And I just think if you draw the conclusion out, the hierarchy of the church is gone. The College of Cardinals is gone. You have just no way of knowing when we will have another pope. I would like them to address that. I would like them to basically, they cannot answer that. They cannot. They basically have to say, I don't know when there'll be another pope. I don't know. I don't even know if we have a Roman clergy. If we even want to grant that could be a valid election. We certainly don't have a College of Cardinals. We certainly don't have any definitive way of knowing who the next pope will be. And that leaves us with a major problem, because if there's a doctrinal matter, if there's a moral matter, we can't get an answer. We can't get a definitive answer. We can't appoint any bishops. We can't really do anything.
Okay, time is up. And now the seventh question from Brother Michael and Brother Peter Dimond.
My question is, does a Satanist who rejects Jesus Christ and the Holy Trinity and worships Lucifer as the one all-powerful God, does he worship the true God, the Holy Trinity, together with Catholics?
No. No, he doesn't. That's my answer. It's a yes or no question, I guess, really. No, he does not worship the one true God if he worships Satan.
2-minute rebuttal?
Well, he just admitted, therefore, he just proved our entire point, because Vatican II and Paul VI and John Paul II officially teach, quote, "But the plan of salvation also embraces those who acknowledge the Creator, and among these the Muslims are first. They profess to hold the faith of Abraham, and along with us they worship the one merciful God who will judge humanity on the last day." There's no difference, okay, in the strict logic of this point, between a Satanist who recognizes one God and claims his name is Lucifer, and a Muslim who rejects Jesus Christ and the Trinity and recognizes Allah as the one God. Vatican II says that the Muslims, together with the Catholics, worship the one true God. Therefore, you'd have to admit that a Satanist who worships Lucifer as the one true God worships the one true God together with Catholics. This is officially taught by Paul VI in Vatican II. It's officially taught in the New Catechism. It's mentioned by John Paul II so many times we have lists of quotes.
It's repeated by Benedict XVI constantly.
And so this absolutely proves and wins the whole debate right here, his admission, and that they would not worship the one true God when his sect, the post-conciliar false counterfeit church, teaches that very bold heresy. How much time's left?
You could have 40 seconds.
And that's exactly why we see John Paul II kissing the Koran, John Paul II going to the mosque, Benedict XVI saying that the Koran is a holy book that he respects.
That's why you never see them trying to convert anyone to the Catholic faith. That's a fact.
That's why he's constantly esteeming, the Muslims.
His profound respect, his profound esteem for different religions.
That's why they were invited, along with the animists and the snake worshippers and the Zoroastrians.
This is a new gospel. Jesus Christ says, unless a man is born again of water and the Holy Ghost, he cannot be saved.
And if you can't see it, that this is the counter-church predicted, then I don't know what to say. That's it.
All right. Next section is the rebuttal. It'll be a 10-minute section, beginning with Mr. Golle.
Okay. Again, I think you have a clear example of what the Dimond brothers have tried to do here, just in their very last question. They take a quote from Vatican II, and they say that they want to call the Muslims Satanists, and because Vatican II says that we worship the same God. Well, obviously, Vatican II does not mean that insofar as Muslims reject Jesus Christ, that we worship the same God. What they do mean is, because Muslims believe in the God of the Old Testament, the God of Abraham, that we worship the same God in that sense. obviously it's very clear. And here's what they do, and here's what they have done. They have taken that quote, which may not be the most prudent quote in the world, may not be the greatest way to word it, but it nonetheless doesn't contain heresy. It can be explained, just like every quote that they've tried to do. Like I said, I would be happy to come back, pick their best 5, give them to me in advance, and we'll do a debate on them. I guarantee you I can show how they can be explained away. But one of the things that I want to hone in on is this unprecedented notion that they don't want to deal with. They want to quote. They want to. It's kind of like, if your business is being audited, you want to just drop all kinds of paperwork on the people auditing you, so the truth gets lost in all the clutter. I think that's what they're trying to do, but it won't work. Their position is there's no pope. There hasn't been a pope for nearly 50 years. And think about it. When I've asked them repeatedly, brothers, how are we going to know when we have a next pope? They don't know. They have no idea. They don't even know. They have to admit that there's no bishops with any ordinary jurisdiction. They definitely have to admit there's no conclave, no college of cardinals, because the oldest cardinals are appointed by Paul VI. Then they don't even know if they have a Roman clergy. Think about the absurdity of this. Think about the criteria if their interpretations are true. Think about the criteria that would mean that these people, the Roman clergy, would have to adhere. They would have to be Sedevacantists, Feniites. They would have to agree with them. And even then, we wouldn't know whether or not the Pope was validly elected. Is that Catholicism? Is that clear Catholicism? No, every dogma of the faith. It's clear. It's clear. The faithful shouldn't have to question and wonder. So we have a situation here, and they have to admit this, where First Vatican Council says that Peter will have successors in perpetuity. Then we have a situation where, hey, it's been 50 years, we don't have a pope, all the cardinals are now dead, and that's how we elect the pope. Well, wait, let's check history. Oh, well, in the past it was the Roman clergy. It hasn't been that way in hundreds of years. Well, how do we get a new pope? They don't know. Could it be that they're wrong, that they are wrong about their logic, that these popes really haven't taught heresy? Have they maybe done things that weren't prudent? Have they maybe not worded things in the right way? I'll give you that. But again, in order for their position to be true, we have no bishops with ordinary jurisdiction because we have no pope. We have no college of cardinals, and the last pope, Pius XII, affirmed the way we get a pope is through the college of cardinals. We have none of that. And again, I go back to the point, and I ask you to ask yourself, is that really Catholicism? Is that really the Catholic Church? I don't think it is. I think that's not the Catholic Church. That's utter chaos. Utter chaos. I mean, sure of God coming down from the sky and writing that we have elected such and such, the entire Catholic Church will not know if there's a pope. And that creates other problems, too. Let's say their position is correct, and they elect a pope, and we don't know who he is. If he pronounces something infallibly, we won't know what it is. If he defines a doctrine, we won't know what it is. If there's a new moral issue that comes up and it's in question, and the Pope rules on it and says, no, this is not correct, or yes, this is permissible, we won't know what it is because we won't be sure who the next Pope is if you follow the Dimond's logic. I mean, they can quote certain passages. I mean, there's 500 things. I hope it's clear that when I guarantee you that, they throw so much at you because, again, in that sense, the advantage is theirs because they've had 50 years to do this. Okay? So they may ask me a question that I may not be able to answer right then and there on the spot, which is probably my fault, and I'll admit that. Okay? But they can't get around the simple logic of their position. They cannot tell. Ultimately, when I ask them the question, how will you know there's another pope? They have to say, we don't know. And there's really no way we could ever know. And if there is a pope elected, we really won't know. So if a pope rules on a matter of faith and morals or changes a disciplinary law in the church, how will anyone know? They simply won't. This is their logic. Not only that, they draw absurd conclusions when even like Sister Lucia. Sister Lucia. I mean, to say, anyone can say, oh, well, she was kidnapped and they killed her, and now they have a letter on their website from some Freemason. That, I mean, it's crazy. I guess they kind of have to do that because Sister Lucia accepted the Novus Ordo, accepted John Paul II, John Paul I, Paul VI. So why didn't the Blessed Mother say to her, hey, they're going to change the mass. They're going to fall into apostasy. Don't follow them. I guess they kind of have to do that because if Sister Lucia did live, we know that since the Blessed Mother communicated with her, we know that the post-conciliar church was the one true church. May have had flaws, but it was the one true church. But I submit to you that we really don't have to look to Sister Lucia. We just have to ask ourselves, wait a second here, is what the Dimond brothers presenting, no pope for 50 years, no college of cardinals, no bishops with ordinary jurisdiction, no Roman clergy, and even if, I want to stress this point, even if the Roman clergy, you could find some Sedevacantists that were legitimate Roman clergy, we still wouldn't know because we still wouldn't know it's a valid pope because it's unprecedented in history that this has happened. We would know who to follow. But I think it's clear that they're not correct, that their conclusions on these councils and statements from these five popes are simply not true. Their conclusions are just simply not true. Just like the quote they gave in their last question about Vatican II and the Muslims, that can be explained away. That's not heresy. It can be looked at in that incident where they worship the one true God in the sense, not in the sense of Jesus, but in the sense of the God of Abraham. Just like the declaration with the Lutherans. If they held to what Martin Luther taught, no, that's heresy. Absolutely. John Paul II isn't saying that that's not heresy. I mean, this is their whole argument. Their whole argument is stretches, taking a quote and stretch it. This guy said this. Oh, you're a heretic. You're not the Pope. You're not Catholic. You're not a bishop. I mean, think about that.
Okay, time's expired, and now the 10-minute rebuttal from Brother Michael and Brother Peter Dimond.
He just said John Paul II, referring to the Lutheran heresies, is not saying that's not heresy. Well, that's exactly what Benedict XVI says. In his book, The Meaning of Christian Brotherhood, he says the conclusion is inescapable. Protestantism is something different from heresy. That's what he says. Okay, it's not heresy. He says that Lumen Gentium 16, the Muslims worshiping the one true God, the heresy that we just proved, and he admitted it was heresy in the question by admitting that the Satanist doesn't worship the one true God, together with Catholics. He said they're not worshiping the one true God in the sense of Jesus. Well, the very passage says they worship the one true God together with Catholics, mankind's judge on the last day. That's Jesus Christ. Okay, so they're saying, Vatican II, that the Muslims and the Catholics together worship mankind's judge on the last day. That means that Jesus Christ couldn't be mankind's judge on the last day because the Muslims don't worship Jesus Christ. So he just proved our point. As far as his attempt to say it's not heresy, I mean, it's obvious to anyone who's looking at it honestly. We've proven it from the very words of his authorities. Okay, and it reminds me of a previous conversation we had where we quoted the heresy of John Paul II. These saints come from all the churches and ecclesial communities. Direct contradiction of Pope Eugene IV. And he said, well, that's not heresy, that's not heresy. Okay, before he knew the full context of the passage, which was that John Paul II goes on to say that these churches gave them entrance into salvation. So John Paul II is explicitly saying that their heretical churches gave them entrance into salvation. He says, we, quote, throw so much at him. Well, there's quite a bit of heresy to go through.
Yeah,
That's not our fault.
You literally have a tidal wave, a tsunami, or a mega tsunami of heresy coming at you. So it's pretty hard not to just lay it out on the line. He also admits that someone who's a heretic before his election to Pope, he would admit, yeah, he would not be Pope. And then he says, but I'm not sure if after he's Pope, if he became a heretic, he would cease to be Pope. But then in the case of John Kerry, he's a clear heretic. The Bishop of Jerusalem, he would lose his office because I think he's a clear heretic.
John Kerry.
It's picking and choosing. And then we pointed out it's in divine law that a heretic cannot be in the church. That's something you got to realize, Mr. Golle. The heretic is not a member of the church. Therefore, if a true pope became a manifest heretic, he would place himself outside of it infallibly.
And with regard to the hierarchy, let's take a look at what the, quote, bishops in communion with the Vatican II sect actually believe. The Bishop of Buffalo was recently vested by the Dalai Lama in a massive ecumenical service with Jews, Muslims, heretics, which is complete apostasy as condemned by Pope Pius XI in Mortale Manimos. We've got the head of Russian bishops, okay, Igor Kovalevsky. He's the Secretary General of the Novus Ordo Conference of Bishops. He says, quote, there is no proselytism, referring to the Orthodox, as a directive on the part of the Holy See, nor is there any intention to convert Russia to Roman Catholicism. This is the head of Russian bishops in communion with Benedict XVI and was in John Paul II. And of course, he's just applying the Balamon statement in which the anti-popes of the Vatican II sect agreed that there's no intention to convert the Orthodox to the Catholic faith. And John Paul II indicated that in numerous joint declarations with the Systematic Patriarch Theotest and others. That
they're asking only for a primacy of honor, that they accept, you know.
Yeah, Benedict XVI in Principles of Catholic Theology says that the Rome need not ask for more. Okay, right after quoting the Orthodox position, he says Rome need not ask for more.
A denial of Vatican I.
Which is a denial of Vatican I.
You have the U.S. bishops, and I think it was maybe 2001, posting on their official website that, quote, campaigns that target Jews for conversion to Christianity are no longer theologically acceptable in the Catholic Church. Okay? We have a copy of it.
Yeah, we have the U.S. Novus Ordo bishops, okay, in 2004 join Christian churches together in the USA, a Protestant communion. Okay, this is a union of different heretical churches. The Novus Ordo bishops joined this, indicating that they're just one of many sects. This is public heresy. We've got the bishop in Jerusalem.
We have Mahoney in Los Angeles meeting with rabbis saying we don't have any intention to convert you. No conversionist agenda in regards to the Jews. I mean, so basically, it's the same situation. You're going to have to decide, Mr. Golle's going to have to decide, well, okay, this guy's a clear heretic, that one's a clear heretic. I mean, you see the evidence here.
We've got the Novus Ordo bishops who have bluntly repudiated the dogmatic Second Council of Lyon. This is still on their website. They say that the dogmatic definition, okay, which condemned those who deny the filioque, is no longer applicable. That's what the Novus Ordo bishops say. The point here is that the bishops all over this Vatican II church are manifest heretics because they're simply implementing the new religion. And anyone who goes to the local Novus Ordo churches, okay, they can see that this is a completely new religion.
You have Hindu services now being conducted on the very spot where Our Lady of Fatima appeared. Okay? And basically fully approved of by Rome. He's not excommunicated. Nothing is censured or interdicted there. Why? Because it's all flowing from the teachings of this heretical Second Vatican Council and the teaching of these anti-popes.
And they're just repeating what John Paul II did at Assisi, which you mentioned earlier, where John Paul II removed the crucifixes so that the animists could go worship their demons, which these false religions worship demons according to sacred scripture. 1 Corinthians 10:20, Psalm 95:5. Okay? And they're just applying that apostasy. And this is all over the place in the Vatican II religion. We could give countless other examples of heresies. Of course, there's Benedict XVI's promotion that you can go to masses which have no words of consecration with an Assyrian schismatic church of the East. Okay, we've got people being raised toward canonization, like Mother Teresa, who said that she loves all religions. Okay,
who praised the meeting of Assisi on October 27th, 1986, where different false religions came and prayed for peace, as the most beautiful gift of God. Okay, who said that if you're a Hindu, we want to make you a better Hindu. If you're a Muslim, we want to make you a better Muslim. And if you're a Catholic, we want to make you a better Catholic.
And as far as evidence of this, proving our point once again, is you have the people who write for the publications of the new religion, such as St. Anthony Messenger. In their article, they had a series on Vatican II, and they flatly admitted that Vatican II's teaching is a revolution. They said, Unitatis Redintegratio, the decree on ecumenism, and Nostra Aetate showed marked changes in the Church's attitudes toward other faiths. Unitatis Redintegratio affirmed that the Church includes all Christians and is not limited exclusively to the Catholic Church. They understand Vatican II quite well. These are the approved publications of the people who have applied Vatican II on the local level. It's universal apostasy. Of course, we mentioned how Paul VI changed the rite to every sacrament. He removed all the references to the sacrificing priesthood from the rite of ordination along the same lines as the Protestants. He told his good friend Jean Guiton that he changed the Mass to make it closer to the Calvinist supper. Okay, they've changed the words of consecration defined by Pope Eugene IV and Pope St. Pius V and repeated in the Roman Missal throughout history. With the wake of Vatican II, we have a sex scandal that's so abominable that it's almost beyond comprehension.
Annulments that are given to absolutely anyone who petitions for them. Almost 100% of the annulment petitions that are asked for are given by the Novus Ordo Church.
Yeah, which is a denial of the indissolubility of marriage. We have Novus Ordo Benedictines and Jesuits officially stalled in Novus Ordo monasteries as teachers of Zen Buddhism. Okay, and there are pictures of this. This is going on.
We have nuns at convents praying that Jews remain faithful to their Jewish religion. I mean, this is outright apostasy. This is a new gospel.
We have every year the Vatican sends an official message commemorating the Buddhist feast of Vesak, the Muslim feast of Ramadan, and the Hindu feast of Diwali. And the Vatican's representative sends a message to all these leaders of false and idolatrous religions saying, we wish you the best and we respect what you're doing and so forth. This is apostasy. You don't have to look very far to see it. And there's just a tidal wave of it, as he says. How much time do we have there?
About 35 seconds.
Okay, we'll call that right now.
Okay, the next section will be closing remarks. This is the last chance to speak, and this will be Mr. Golle for 15 minutes.
Okay, I wish to thank the brothers for having me. It was a good experience. Like I said, I think a number of issues came up in this debate. One is some of the quotes that they mentioned. I knew from talking to them earlier and listening to other people talk to them and looking at their website, I knew there was really no defense for their tidal wave of quotes that they were going to throw. It's just simply, in this situation, it's simply impossible to address and talk about all of them. But one of the things that I wanted to, number one, I want to reiterate the fact that they would like to have another debate and maybe put their top 4 or top 5 quotes I would be happy to discuss them and show how they can be reconciled, or if they want to do another debate on extra ecclesia nullis salus, outside the church of new salvation, something like that, I'd be happy to do that. Maybe we can talk about that later. I reiterate the fact that when they're making these quotes, if you listen carefully and you listen closely, they're drawing interpretations from them. It's not absolutely clear what they're saying. In other words, they're drawing a conclusion from the text. One of the reasons is that for some reason, and I may not agree with this, but as of the last 30 or 40 years, the mindset of the church is to try to word things where it may be a little bit more politically correct. Now, I'm not saying that is right, but my point that I'm making is that you cannot necessarily attribute something to heresy unless it's a clear denial of the faith, and this is what they're doing. I think it's clear that they can quote 500 passages or 500 statements. They absolutely can do that. I'm saying that their position cannot be true. It cannot be true because if their position is correct, we will not be able to have another pope. It would take God to come down from the sky and write it in fire that we've elected this particular pope. Now, is that plausible? Or could it be that the Dimond brothers have it wrong? That there has not been a Sedevacantism period for the last 50 years, or roughly 50 years. Think about if what they're saying is true, and this is why I say it cannot be true. If what they're saying is true, it appears to be Vatican I is a lie. Because in order for the papacy to be the papacy, not only would Peter have successors in perpetuity, but the faithful would have to know who the Pope is. It only makes sense. Think about that. What kind of church would it be if there was a Pope but nobody knew who he was? That's their position. They have not addressed it. In order to win the debate, they needed to, and they haven't done it. Matter of fact, if you go back and roll the tape, when I asked them how they would know another Pope was Pope, they simply have to say, I don't know. Well, in other cases back in history, the Roman clergy did, but we don't know. Number one, that creates a couple of problems. Number one, according to them, I'm not even sure if we have a Roman clergy. That's one. Again, in order for it to be a valid Roman cleric, number one, they would have to be Sedevacantists, according to them. Number two, they would have to accept all their extreme views, like extra ecclesia nullis salus in the strictest sense, that water baptism is absolutely necessary, or they wouldn't be a valid Roman cleric. I mean, you can probably search the streets of Rome. I don't think there is one. And even if that's the case, even if you could find a Roman clergy, we still wouldn't know if that was valid, because we've never had this happen in history where you've had a papal election where the whole electorate is dead. We don't have that. So how do we get out of this crisis? If you're following the Dimond's logic. If you're following the Dimond's logic, number one, you have no hierarchy. You have no pope. You have no bishops that have ordinary jurisdiction because they get their jurisdiction from the Holy Roman Pontiff. You have no way of knowing when there'll be another pope. As a matter of fact, there may be another pope if you follow the Dimond logic. Maybe they just don't know who he is. Maybe he's made a pronouncement on a doctrinal matter. I mean, do you see the absurdity in this? They can quote all the documents they want. They can interpret it. And not only that, why haven't they elected him? I mean, by now, if there was a legitimate Roman clergy, wouldn't you think after 50 years they would elect the Pope? I mean, to have a visible head. I mean, and it's time. What are they going to do in 10 years from now? What are they going to do in 20 years from now? What are they going to do in 30 years from now when there's still no Pope? Eventually, you're going to have to wake up and say, whoa, we're prideful. We don't want to admit this, but we're wrong. In our sense of logic here, how are we ever going to get another Pope? We have no College of Cardinals. We have nothing. I mean, it's eventually you have to sit back and you have to say to yourself, well, we may have made a mistake here. Maybe our conclusions that we're drawing are not true. And I think that if you think back and you look and you say to yourself, if I follow the Dimonds, I don't have a hierarchy. That's against what Vatican I taught. I don't have a Pope. That's not in and of itself against what Vatican I taught. But when I don't have a hierarchy and I don't have a College of Cardinals to elect another Pope, how am I going to know if there is a Pope? As a matter of fact, I didn't even think of this before. Maybe I should have asked them this. Maybe they can address this in their closing remarks. But how do they know there isn't a Pope elected? There may be. Maybe there is a Pope there. I mean, if you want to follow your logic, maybe he got elected by someone, the Roman clergy, the Sedevacantism Roman clergy, and maybe the see isn't vacant. How would they know? Following their logic. I think it's very, very clear that the Dimond brothers are correct, that they may quote a lot of documents. They may be good debaters. They may be well read on these things, and I'll give them credit for that. But I think the basic premise of their position can't be supported because the papal see is vacant. There's no way anyone's going to ever know if their position is correct. No one's ever going to know when we're going to have another Pope. They don't even know if we have a Pope right now, because how could they? So I think if the people listening to this debate could take a hard look and ask themselves that very question and think about some of the, in my opinion, absurd conclusions that have to be drawn, like Sister Lucy was kidnapped and killed, and there's now an imposter, and that we don't have a Pope, and now we don't know if we're ever going to get a Pope again, or there could be a Pope now because we don't know. I mean, if you follow their conclusions, that's what you're going to have to conclude. You're going to have to conclude that, number one, we don't know how we're going to get another Pope. Number two, there may be a Pope now because we don't know how he would get elected. And number three, we know that Peter's supposed to have perpetual successors. So it raises a lot of problems for the Sedevacantists. They can quote a lot of passages. That's the bread and butter of their argument. And again, I think they're smart to do so, but you have to keep in mind they have 47 years of papal speeches, documents, and they can proof text their way through anything. And like I said, I've made the offer. You want to pick your top 3, top 4 votes. We'll talk about them. We'll debate it. I want to reiterate thanks to the Dimonds. This is my second time I've actually done a formal debate, and I think it was a good experience. I just hope that everyone can hone in and ask themselves that question, that very question that I've posed throughout this debate, that I believe that I've hammered home, and that I don't believe that the Dimonds have answered. How will we know when there'll be another pope? Who's going to elect it? Is there a pope even now? Because they don't know. If he got elected yesterday, they wouldn't know. Okay? And that creates all kinds of problems. Just think about it. What if he made an infallible pronouncement? What if he excommunicated someone? What if he made a disciplinary law? And I'm not saying people would be bound by that because they wouldn't know, but wouldn't it make sense? Does it make sense? Their position that the faithful simply don't know if there's a pope or how there will be a pope? It simply doesn't make sense. I mean, that's what you're going to have to believe if you accept their position. Again, I want to thank you, and I think that's all I have. So they can do their last 15 minutes.
Okay, now we'll have the 15-minute closing remarks from Brother Michael and Brother Peter Dimond.
Mr. Golle says that we ask the question, you have to ask the question, who is the Pope? When are we going to get the next Pope? He would be asking the same questions during the Great Western Schism. I can see him standing there during the Great Western Schism saying, we have chaos. We have chaos. How are we going to get out of this? Okay? So that doesn't prove that the church doesn't exist. That doesn't prove that it's an implausible situation to have some confusion or a lot of confusion created and allowed by God. And his question about the people have to know who the Pope is. Well, there are people for decades during the Great Western Schism who didn't clearly maybe know exactly who the true Pope was. So these same questions that he's asking now, he could be asking during the Great Western Schism. But there was an answer. There was the church is what still exists at that time. So that doesn't prove his point at all. We brought out the theologians after the First Vatican Council who admit that you could have decades without a thoroughly ascertained head of the church, such as Edmund O'Reilly. So basically, none of his points, add up there.
Yes, he brings up the issue of the hierarchy. Well, the hierarchy can be defined two ways, jurisdictionally and ecclesiastically. Any validly ordained Catholic priest is a member of the ecclesiastical hierarchy, and they would represent the Catholic hierarchy. And St. Athanasius says that even if the true church were reduced to a handful of true believers, they would remain the true church of Christ on earth. Okay, and we've proven throughout this debate a number of things. We've proven, without any doubt, that Vatican II is heretical, that Benedict XVI, his, quote, Pope, even admits that it contradicts the magisterial teaching of Pope Pius IX. We quoted Cardinal Casper, the one appointed to his position by Benedict XVI and John Paul II, Mr. Golle's authorities. He says, we no longer understand in ecumenism in the sense of a return by which the others would be converted. This was expressly abandoned by Vatican II. We've proven that Benedict XVI himself holds the same heresy. We've proven that he explicitly references Vatican I's dogmatic definitions and says they don't bind the schismatics. We've proven that the Vatican II sect is Protestant. It agrees with the Lutherans on the doctrine of justification. Mr. Golle didn't answer the question about whether someone who believes in justification by faith alone would be considered a Catholic, because obviously he couldn't be, and that's exactly the same principle we apply to these manifest heretics. He admitted that John Kerry would have to be considered a heretic, however, and in so doing, he's proving our point that those who are even more manifestly heretical than he is are considered heretics. We could cite other cases in church history, which he's already made reference to, and he says that they throw so much at you, 50 years to do this. Yes, it is, and he actually said, his words were, there is, quote, no defense for all these quotes, and that's exactly right. There is absolutely no defense. The fact that the Vatican II anti-popes are public heretics is undeniable, and it absolutely proves the point that this has been predicted. If the past crises in the church, where we saw massive confusion, we saw 97% of the bishops lost in the Arian crisis, if that was not the Great Apostasy, what is in store for the Great Apostasy? And we're seeing what it is.
And also, during the Great Western Schism, for those who would say that well, we should just accept these guys. We're all in confusion, so it doesn't matter, all these issues. During the Great Western Schism, you didn't have clear-cut manifest heresy and apostasy with the guys who are claiming to be the leadership of the church. So it was a real confusion back in the Great Western Schism because all these guys came out and said they were Catholics. It was just a matter of finding who was the true line, which was very confusing. In this case, we have manifest heresy and apostasy everywhere, and we cannot be in communion with manifest heretics and apostates.
He brings up the case of, repeatedly, the argument that we don't know when we'd get the next pope, and I proved in the answers to those questions that we still don't know exactly how Pope Eugene I became the pope when his original election was invalid by the Roman clergy because Pope St. Martin I was already alive. But somehow, Pope Eugene became the recognized pope. We don't know when. We don't know exactly what time. But that's exactly the principle. So it doesn't prove anything. He cannot cite one teaching of the church which says that a vacancy of the papal chair can only last X number of years. Therefore, it's no argument. He cannot cite one teaching of the church which says that if all the cardinals die at one time, the church would cease to exist because this ecclesiastical law is always binding and we could never have another pope. There's nothing. So what is not proven falls without the necessity to refute it. Hasn't proven anything. It really comes down to a matter of two different religions. The Catholic religion, as believed and held by all the popes from St. Peter on, through up to Vatican II, and the anti-popes who have attempted to impose upon the world a new religion, which has changed all the rites to all the sacraments, has a new mass, its fruits are plain to all to see. The Catholic religion teaches that non-Catholics cannot receive Holy Communion. The Vatican II religion holds and teaches that non-Catholics can receive Holy Communion. The Catholic Church infallibly teaches that Jews and others who reject Christ, the Church rejects. The Vatican II Church teaches that Jews are not to be considered as having been rejected by God. The Catholic Church teaches that Protestants and Schismatics must be converted and return to the Catholic Church. The Vatican II sect holds that Protestants and Schismatics don't need to be converted, and it rejects the ecumenism of the return. The Catholic Church teaches that it's a sin to partake in non-Catholic worship. The Vatican II Church teaches that it's a good thing to partake in non-Catholic worship, as we see taught throughout the Directory for the Application and the Principles of and Norms of Ecumenism approved by John Paul II. The Catholic Church teaches that meetings, religious congresses with pagans, infidels, and heretics, presuppose the idea that all religions are more or less good. And it condemns such interreligious prayer meetings as apostasy. The Vatican II anti-popes arrange these meetings, take part in these meetings, and praise these meetings when they're done. The Catholic Church teaches that Islam is a diabolical sect, as Pope Calixtus III said. He referred to it as a diabolical sect. The Vatican II Church teaches that Islam should be protected. Its anti-popes teach that its followers worship the one true God, that the Koran is a holy book of a great religion which should be kissed. The Catholic Church teaches that the members of non-Catholic sects are excommunicated for heresy and schism. The Vatican II anti-popes teach that the excommunications against the schismatics are canceled from the memory of the Church, that Protestantism is not even heresy, but it does excommunicate those who want to celebrate the traditional Latin Mass within 48 hours. The Catholic Church sends her missionaries all over the world to convert infidels, heretics, and schismatics. The Vatican II sect and its anti-popes turn away converts who come to them begging to be converted, such as Father Linus von Popon, who was turned away by the Vatican when he wanted to convert. He was turned away in the name of ecumenism. The Catholic Church teaches that marriage is indissoluble, and it is even allowed an entire country to go into schism, England, rather than compromise this truth. With the Anglican schism, we saw that. But the Vatican II anti-popes and their authorities underneath them grant an annulment to almost anyone who wants one. How anyone cannot see, as the Vatican II anti-popes march from Buddhist temples to Lutheran churches to schismatic churches, as they remove the crucifixes so that the animists and the Zoroastrians can worship their false gods, how anyone cannot see that these are the prophesied anti-popes to come in Rome in the last days, heading a counter-church predicted by Our Lady, predicted in Scripture, Okay, you'd have to be blind, deaf, and dumb, or just a plain liar once you've seen all the evidence. The Catholic Church teaches that justification by faith alone is a heresy anathematized by the Council of Trent, a heresy invented by Martin Luther and condemned repeatedly in the strongest terms. The Vatican II sect agrees with Lutherans on justification, says that the canons of the Council of Trent no longer apply, and that faith alone is not a heresy.
And also you have, as we mentioned at the beginning, the prophecies that at the end of time, that the faithful will be reduced to really a small remnant. Our Lord says, will there be any faith when he returns? The man of sin will be allowed by God to sit in what seems to be the temple of God, not the temple of Satan, the temple of God, which different biblical scholars have identified as being St. Peter's in Rome, where the very body of St. Peter is buried in the basement of St. Peter's Basilica. You have also the prediction of Leo XIII that we mentioned when he composed the original St. Michael prayer, about Satan setting up his own throne in Rome, being allowed by God. We have the people who have read the Third Secret of Fatima, as we mentioned, who have said that it speaks specifically about a massive apostasy that's going to be started and promoted, disseminated from the person who claims to be the very head of what people will think is the Catholic Church. He will not actually be a true head, but it will be an anti-pope. We have the other predictions and prophecies that speak about this kind of situation happening in the last days of the world. Our opponent doesn't seem to believe, obviously, that we're in the last days of the world, or if he did believe that we're in the last days of the world, he knows, and everyone else knows, that there's a great apostasy that's going to take place at the end of the world. So he's talking about percentages and how few people believe this. Well, there are not going to be many people that really believe the truth, especially at the end of the world, as our Lord specifically states. So we have that, and also the fact that our Lord says in Matthew 7:13 that broad is the way that leadeth to hell, and many there are that go that way, and straight and narrow is the gate that leadeth to heaven, and how few there are who find it. And then we have also the predictions on the whore of Babylon, which is clearly a counterfeit Catholic Church being set up from Rome. We have the predictions in the Apocalypse about how the whore sits upon the city of seven mountains, Rome. We have the whore described as a woman and a mother. The church is described as a woman and a mother. We have the whore described as being clothed round about in purple and scarlet. And, of course, we have bishops wearing purple, cardinals wearing scarlet, and clothed round about their waists in purple and scarlet. We have the whore described as having a golden cup in her hand full of abomination and filthiness, which, of course, they change the ritual of the Mass and change the very words of consecration in the wine portion of the consecration, which produces a defective form, a defective intention, and therefore no consecration, and therefore no valid Masses with this Novus Ordo Mass. We have this statement by St. John that the light of the lamp shall no longer shine in the whore of Babylon, this false church, which means the sanctuary lamp and the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. We have the statement, the voice of the pipe is no longer heard in the whore of Babylon, which is talking about the removal of the traditional Catholic liturgical music and replaced with worldly music. So we have all these. We also have the statement, the whore is drunk with the blood of the saints and martyrs, because this false ecumenism of these anti-popes and this anti-church renders absolutely meaningless all the sufferings of the saints and martyrs, not to embrace false religions, where saints and martyrs throughout the history of the church went through the most horrific torments and sufferings, not to compromise one slight bit of the teaching of the church, and they were killed, not to compromise. Now the Vatican II sect encourages people to compromise the faith. We have the true church fleeing into the wilderness, the people who say, where's the faithful? Where's the visibility of the church? Which St. Athanasius says, even if the true church is reduced to a handful of true believers, they are the true church of Christ on earth. So you have all these statements. You have that the saints and the martyrs crying out from under the altar in the Apocalypse. Why would they be doing that? It's talking about Novus Ordo churches where the relics of martyrs are in the Catholic altars, and they're seeing these abominations being committed on these altars, and they're crying out, how long, O Lord, will you await? So it's clearly identifying the post-Vatican II sect that we have Absolutely.
And to really drive the point home and prove the point, we've cited, the actions. We got him to, we asked him whether the actions of ecumenism signify a denial of the papal primacy. He said no, and then we quoted Benedict XVI, who admitted that they do. But to prove the point, we need look no farther than his own Seton Hall University, where he went.
And got his degree.
Yeah. Its official website declares, quote, this is supposedly a Catholic university, whether you are looking for a nearby synagogue, a Muslim group to join for Friday prayers, or an interfaith Bible study, campus ministry will connect you. So we see that in his own university, which purports to be Catholic, the massive rejection of Jesus Christ, rejection of the gospel, promotion of Judaism, encouragement if people go to the synagogue is promoted, absolutely proving our point. They will connect you with apostasy. That's what the counter-church does.
And we've shown throughout the history of the church that we've had anti-popes. We've had 41 anti-popes. What the church teaches about anti-popes, how if they're manifest heretics, they would lose their office. If a true pope became a manifest heretic, he would lose his office. If he's a manifest heretic prior to his election, even if all the cardinals seem to elect him, no Catholic can accept him. His election is being valid. So these
all right, that's the time.
Okay.
So at this point, this is the conclusion of the debate.
We would like to encourage all the people who hear this debate to get our 3 DVD package, which contains 10 programs, audio tapes, flyers, magazines, for only $8. And they can order that online at our website, www.mostholyfamilymonastery.com. That's MONASTERY.com. Or they can call us at 1-800-275-1126. Also, on our website, we have almost all of our videos online, which people can watch for free.